We have a fan question from Janine Tepsa, and Janine's question is, what made you want to start a band?
Uh, Same reason anybody wants to start a band. It's like it's cool. Like especially when we started, it was cool to be in a band. Like um, there was almost like it's all different now in the streaming era, I think. But like you wanted to have your friends and you're driving around. You got your own little secret mission that and fuck everybody that doesn't get it. It's all about this thing, and one day it's going to work out. And if we just keep working hard, it's like this. It's like kind of like this adventure, and you're on it with your family and your best friends, and it's awesome. It's not easy, but it does feel like it's like a sense of belonging. And I'm trying not to sound too corny about it, but you feel like you're part of something. You're part of something that's bigger than you, and you're not just alone in the world or something. And this is when you're 16, 17, 18, and those are like prime times to feel pretty alone in the world for most people. And if you weren't like a elite athlete or a popular kid or really good at school, which I certainly wasn't, it was kind of a good way to be like, yeah, but this is who I am, and I'm going to define myself with this. So I think that's probably the impetus.
And what's the story behind the band name The Trews? So I had never heard of that word before the band itself, and that's not actually the band's first name.
Well, funny side note, we did an interview like this with Classic Rock Magazine in England a couple weeks ago, me and my brother. And I will get to the explanation, but first, it was like the most British interview of all time. And the guy said, well, what's with the name The Trews? Do you feel like that name may have held you back? And I was like, oh, now I do. But no, so the original band that I was in grade 10, never played a show in my life. It was with my really good friend at the time, Jimmy Barter. We had a band called One-Eyed Trouser Snake. And we would play, because we loved the Monty Python movies and The Meaning of Life, One-Eyed Trouser Snake. So that was our name of our band. We never played a show ever. So when I moved back to Antigonish after being out west, working for my uncle and starting the band with John-Angus and Jack, we decided to call our band One-Eyed Trouser Snake because I already had that band name. I'm like, let's just call it that. So we start playing around town as One-Eyed Trouser Snake, and then we dropped the snake as One-Eyed Trouser. And then we spelt it one-eyed, I don't know why, but I apostrophe D trouser makes zero sense. And then we decided to go out after I got finished at university and the guys decided not to finish university, we got into the van and we drove up to Ontario to play gigs. We found our first manager in Buffalo, New York. And he said, you guys are great, but your name is terrible. Like all those bands are outdated, like the One-Eyed and the Third-Eyed Blind. This was like early 2000. This was 2000. And he said, you guys should just call yourselves Trouser. So I'm like, okay, that's it. So 2000, we become Trouser. Now all of our promo kits that we were making ourselves had Trouser on it. And then we get signed to Larry Wannegus's management label in 2001. And then in 2002, we're working with Gordie Johnson, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. And we are making our first 4-song EP, and we were going to call it Trouser. And the night or two before it was set to come out, we got a cease and desist letter our band had negative $400 between the four of us. Like, we got a cease and desist letter from a acid jazz alternative band from Mississauga that was using the name Trouser. So they said, you cannot use this. So we sent it to our management. It's like they've signed to use this name. It's their domain or whatever, their copyright. And then we got a call. Like, we were trying to think of different band names. At one point, we were going to call ourselves Rudy. We had all these names. I'm like, none of this sounds good, And Jack, our bass player, his mom called and said, you guys should call yourselves the Trews. And we're like, oh, that sounds kind of good, but like, what the hell does it mean? Like, it's not the truth, and there's no plural of Trews, like Trues. But no, she's like, no, so Trews are a Scottish version of trouser. So trousers are pants, which is kind of a lame name for a band. And then Trews are Scottish pants. They're like tartan pants that look kind of like a kilt, but they're pants. So, we had 24 hours to make this decision. And if you ask anybody in a band, you never know if you're going to make one EP or if you're going to have a career that lasts 30 years. You don't know. So we made the decision on the fly that no, we're the Trews now. And I remember Gordy being like, "Why are you changing the name? What the hell is?" We had just gone out opening for Big Sugar as Trouser, and I said, "We can't." And then Gordy's like, "I hated the name until Jack, our bass player, whose mom said the name of the Trews, actually had a pair of Trews." And Gordy's like, "What does that even mean?" And Jack showed him his pants. "These are Trews." And Gordy's like, "When Jack showed me the pants, I was like, okay, this is all right." So that's the story of the Trews.
What's funny is I've been a fan for 22 years and I didn't know what what that word meant until the last few days where I started doing my research. So I'm sure for a lot of fans listening, this is the first time they hear what that means as well.
And circling back to the British guy who interviewed us a couple weeks ago, Trews in England and in the UK, everybody knows what that means. So it would be like if someone came over here and said, "Hey, we're the Jeans." And everyone's like, "Why would you call yourselves that?" And like, so over there, it's kind of, yeah, maybe not quite as mysterious as it is over here.
So you've mentioned Jack a few times, the bass player for the Trews. So I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't reach out to Jack and get some kind words from him. So Jack says, "Colin is one of my favorite people on the planet. We've gone through a lot together and I'm happy I get to know him. Sometimes I can't tell if he knows how cool he is, but I'm going to go so far as to say I think he's as cool as a moose, and that's about as cool as it gets." So that's two guests now that say how cool you are. So, by popular assumption here, you are the cool guy.
Yeah, well, thank you. I really appreciate that, Jack.
That's too funny. You mentioned one EP that you guys recorded. Was there a second EP before you got signed?
So, yeah, I mean, going way back, our first EP was called the Trouser EP, an album I really cringe at the thought of, but people seem to like it. There was like 800 copies printed up, and it's very rare. And some people show up at shows with that. I do not like that EP, but it is part of our history. And then we made the EP with Gordy in 2002, which was just the Trews EP. And then 3 of those 4 songs ended up on House of Ill Fame, which came out in 2003.
And how did you originally attract the attention of the record label, Bumstead?
Interesting story, long story, but that's what long form podcasts are for.
That's why we're here, baby.
So in 2001, one of the reasons we came up to, there's so many things that happened that kind of led us to where we are. But so we had a drummer in Antigonish named Ramsey Clark. Great drummer, great look. It sounds like Spinal Tap when you talk about drummers. But anyway, he decided he didn't want to be in a band in 2001. He just didn't, it wasn't for him. So we had done a bunch of touring that year between 2000 and early 2001. And one of the last gigs he did with us, the last one, was that we got 2 nights to open for Jeff Healey Band at the Marquee Club in Halifax. And that was a huge deal. And it was, amazing. And so we got up and did our last 2 gigs with Ramsey, opening for Jeff Healey. And Jeff Healey loved us. He said, "That's like the best new Canadian rock band going." And we were like, "Oh my God." That was unbelievable. And not only did he say that, he's like, "Look, I'm opening a club in Toronto at Queen and Bathurst called Healy's, and I want you to be my house band all through the summer of 2001. And we're like, "Okay, we're moving up to Ontario. This is, you don't turn down that invite." So Ramsey left the band. So we had to get a new drummer quick. So we called our cousin Sean, really, really close with Sean, really talented, really hilarious. We were together since children. And he was getting kind of sick of his school. He was at St. Anne's doing school in Nova Scotia, and we called him up like, "Hey, Ramsey left the band. Do you want to join?" And Sean's like, "Absolutely, I'm doing it." It's just something in him. It just clicked. So Sean joined, and then we just decided to move to Ontario. We had nowhere to live, and we got up to, we looked around for places to live in Toronto, Hamilton, but when we couldn't afford anything, so we moved to Niagara Falls. That's another story. But we ended up being the house band at Healy's all through the summer. And it was extraordinary. He would get up and play with us. He was phenomenal. We'd see all these kind of famous people out in the crowd because Healy's Bar had just opened. we weren't a known band yet, so we were like doing covers and our own stuff, and it was hard to get off the ground, right? So eventually, like the first few, I think it was every Thursday or something, they were packed with our family and friends, like couldn't believe it. But as the days and weeks went by, it was hard to keep the hype up. We had no albums out, no record deal, nothing, you know? And by the fall of 2001, which was kind of a dark time anyway, we got fired. And it was like, sorry guys, like you're not bringing in people. And we were so dejected and it was so sad. And this other guy who used to get up and do a Joe Cocker impersonation, his name was Jeff LaBar, phenomenal guy, phenomenal singer, sounded exactly like Joe Cocker, and he would do all of his mannerisms. And so as a Hail Mary for our last couple of weeks at Healy's, there was 2 gigs left. Jeff LaBar, God rest his soul, he got us a gig on breakfast television in Toronto. And we were like, this will be our last chance to advertise the show. And we did one original that we thought was pretty good called Nowhere Left to Stand. And I was playing piano on it. And we did a morning TV of Nowhere Left to Stand. And we thought nothing more of it. You know, we went and then we played 2 more shows at Healy's. And that was probably a Tuesday morning. On the Thursday, I might be getting my days wrong. We go down and play Healy's and no one's there. And it was like, welcome to the music business. But there's one guy there, and it's this big guy, big giant man with these glasses, and he was grinning ear to ear, and he was sitting at the bar and just smiling. And I'm like, who in God's name is that? Like, what's up with this guy? I'm kind of freaked out. He's this big guy. He's the only guy watching the band. And then I didn't hear anything. So then I get an email saying, a new fan from Larry at Bumstead Productions. And I'm like, this is before, I know, catfishing or whatever it is called now. But I was like, what? Who the hell is this? Like, or spamming or whatever. And I'm like, this has got to be a joke. And he's like, look, I saw your set at Healy's. I'm a manager and I'm really interested in meeting with you guys. And I was like, I was over email on my, I don't know, even before Yahoo, whatever it was. And it was like, I said to John-Angus, I was like, I think we're getting, like, someone's pranking us or something. And I said, oh, okay. And I just said, okay, cool. Who are you? And he goes, I manage Big Sugar, and I used to manage Katie Lang. And I'm like, oh, no, shit. and then I realized, oh, this is real. Like, this is that weird guy from the show. And he's like, I really want to bring Gordie Johnson down to see you guys. But, you know, I want to meet you guys, and then I want to talk about getting some music together for you guys. And we were just like, absolutely. And that's how we met Larry.
That's so insane. So I'm wearing my Big Sugar shirt for this interview, and I have Gordie's face immortalized from the album cover from when I did an interview with him a few years ago. Were you already a Big Sugar fan, and what was it like working with a legend like Gordie Johnson?
Oh, I mean, God, like so Larry. I'll pick up where the story. So I wrote back to Larry, hey, we have a manager in Buffalo. Do you think you guys can both manage us? And he's like, no, if you don't want to, he's like, I'm managing you guys or nothing. And I was like, you know, okay, because I know Dave Taylor was his name in Buffalo. Great guy, still a lovely guy, but you know, we needed something different. And so Larry starts bringing Gordie. So I think there was a couple of shows left at Healy's, so the next week he brings Gordie down to see the show. And we were like, back in those days, having grown up watching him on TV and stuff, we were just like, it's like an alien from outer space. It's like, oh, somebody has descended from planet Fame to meet us. And he was like the coolest guy we could possibly have imagined in Canadian, almost like unusually cool for a Canadian rock star. Do you know what I mean? Like, Canadian rock stars are usually kind of a little bit not like that, but he was so suave, and he'd wear like Gucci suits and all that stuff. And he was like the man, you know? And I remember he watched us, and I was so nervous because it was just like 5 people in the crowd that night. Larry and his assistant Matt and Gordie Johnson and a couple of stragglers were watching our show, and I kept trying not to make eye contact with Gordie because I was so nervous. And he told us later that he didn't like what we were doing because it was too chaotic, but we did a cover of The Shapes of Things to Come from the Jeff Beck Truth record. And he goes, when you guys did that, I was like, okay, I want to work with these guys because I'm like, these guys are good. But we were doing, our originals weren't fleshed out yet, so it was like everybody's overplaying, and it was really chaotic. So that's when we first got hooked up with Gordie, and that was through Larry. I mean, now that, as time's gone by, I think Gordy was looking to get into producing younger bands, and I think Larry was kind of like, hey, well, you can work with my client Gordy.
Gordy is so cool that the rest of us are like, well, I'm not cool if that's what cool looks
Yeah,
like.
yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, like once yeah, if you met Gordy in the early 2000s, like that's pretty much the pinnacle of cool. And yeah, he taught us everything. We met with him a couple days later, and he said, I listened to your demo, and I'm going to tell you why it sucks. And we were all like, oh, and he was right. But he goes, the thing about you guys is you can all play good, but you're not grooving. You're kind of all hopping down Queen Street on one leg. Like you want to be able to walk. And he just taught us everything about, not everybody playing on the same beat, like, making the groove, the dynamics open and wide. And because we were already good players, we learned real quick, and it was mind blowing. Like basically it was like less is more, if I had to put it in a nutshell. Like, John-Angus and Colin don't have to be playing the exact same guitar riff the whole way through, and Jack doesn't have to play along with the guitar. Like Jack can do his thing, and Sean can kind of anchor the beat, and he gave us a bunch of records. He goes, go listen to the meters and just jam on that stuff, and you'll learn how to really play. And we just devoured it. We were so eager, and he taught us everything. We went from being this like kind of, band with potential, but was kind of confused. And overnight we started to sound like, oh, these guys are getting good. And it was Gordy.
So in 2003, you guys released that debut album, House of Ill Fame. There's 5 singles, including Not Ready to Go. I just want to give a few of the accolades for Not Ready to Go. So it hit #1 on Canadian rock radio, making you the first indie band to ever achieve that. It was the most played song of 2004 in that format. The song goes platinum and was nominated for a Juno for Single of the Year. Can you describe what your life was like at that exact moment in time where you have a #1 song, platinum album, Gordy Johnson produces it? How's life at that point?
It was a dream. It was a dream. It's so funny. I was in love with a girl, and I remember like I had met her just before the record came out, and kind of before that, before I met her, I was just obsessed with the band, and I was obsessed with trying to make it, and obsessed with like, what's it going to take? What's it going to take? I really was like kind of almost strangling the thing to death, because I was so, by that time we had been going at it for 2 years. It was hard playing, 5-6 days a week. And then all of a sudden our fortunes started to change. And it was like right at a time when it was new love. And I was just kind of like in the haze of that. And I remember all of a sudden, like, I kind of wanted to be home more because I really loved this girl. And all of a sudden we're like, no, you're going to go out and tour with Big Sugar for a month and a half. You're going to tour with 3 Days Grace and Theory of a Dead Man for 2 months. You're going to tour with Nickelback for a bunch. Then you're going to go out with Sam Roberts Band. And then you're going to spend the whole summer with Evanescence. So we ended up on so many weird bills. And I just remember thinking like, wow, everything's happening that I always wanted. And I'm just kind of like, I just remember it was a feeling of like letting go, and then it just all felt kind of like a dream. I remember Chad Kroger came up to me at a Juno's party in 2004, and Not Ready to Go was kind of climbing up the charts, and he goes, I think you're #1 this week. And I'm like, no, man, we're #3. He's like, no, you're #1. And I'm like, no, he must be out of his mind. And then on that Tuesday, we did Much Music. I don't know if you remember the show Much on Demand. And they were keeping it from us. They wanted to keep it like a surprise. And I remember Rick the Temp announced on Much Music, you guys are the #1 song in the country right now on rock radio. And I was like, it's that you can actually find that on YouTube. And so Chad had the early lowdown on that bit of information, and it all feels like a dream. It feels like a dream now. It's like, yeah, no regrets. Beautiful.
So in 2003, 2004, I was in London, Ontario, going to school for audio engineering. I was 18 years old, and that's how I discovered the Trews, Not Ready to Go came out. And for some reason, all my best friends in that program were from the East Coast. So anytime a band from the East Coast played in the London or GTA area, we all went. So the Trews or Winter Sleep or Matt Mays. And I ended up seeing you guys. I've seen you probably 15 times now over the years,
Oh
but
my
during that
God.
1 year, I would go see you guys because I liked you. And then I would go see Sam Roberts. Oh, and the Trews were opening. And then I'd go see Matt Mays. And oh, the Trews are also on the bill. Man, you guys might have been the hardest working live band ever in 2003, 2004, and it hasn't really changed since then.
Oh yeah, that was kind of our. Um, and that's really funny. It's funny because London was one of the first places FM 96 started really playing our songs a lot, and we'd play Fanshawe a lot. Fanshawe College. Is that where you were? Fanshawe?
I was at a private college that started from graduates from Fanshawe. They started a private college. Yeah.
So London was one of our early markets where we started to notice people were actually turning out, and we're like, oh, this is great. So we went there a lot, and when we went number one, there was a lot of like hoopla about it. It was like in Maclean's magazine, and I remember there was one advertisement that said like, this is how many shows the band plays a year, and I think they said like 250, which might have been slightly inflated, but then once that was kind of what we were labeled as, the hardest working band. I mean, the next 10 years, it was all like that. Like we just had to go out and tour. We toured constantly. So, yeah.
I remember buying the album then, and I remember Hopeless was like my favorite song that was more of like an album cut hidden gem on that album.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. I've always liked that song a lot. That was a very different song when it first got written. That was when we finally learned how to write songs. I remember we had in a span of a month, we had Not Ready to Go, Tired of Waiting, and Hopeless were all three songs that came all at the same time. And I remember I was trying to write like kind of like this really catchy Police thing, and it was all on major chords. And then when Gordy heard it and heard the lyric, he would be like, "Man, sometimes your lyrics are so incongruous with this is like a pop song, but your lyrics are so dark." So he took everything and made it the relative minor. So it was originally E, A major, D, G major, and then he went down to like D flat minor, A, and then made it all dark. But he kept the vocal take from the catchy version and just overdubbed his own guitar. That's Gordy playing guitar, and he just made everything minor and then remixed it kind of as, like, you know how Gordy would do that dub remix stuff? And he did that with that song. We're like, whoa, that's really great. But that was Gordy following his instincts on that one.
So the song Not Ready to Go is still the band's most popular song on Spotify, 8.3 million plays. Why do you think people love that song so much? It feels like an anthem, which is why I think sports teams use it.
Yeah, it was just a genuine hit, you know. I remember, it's so funny because I remember hearing it back when like, you know, I've definitely been prone to some depressive episodes in my life, and being, you know, I've definitely been in lows, especially when I used to drink all the time and stuff. And I remember being so like kind of deflated by the time we were in the studio doing that record. And then when I heard the playback of that song with the backup vocals and Tired of Waiting with the backup vocals, I'm like, no matter how I feel right now, this is going to change stuff for us. I remember not thinking that, just feeling it, you know? So, I just think that song had a certain little bit of pixie dust magic. I mean, you can't, like, that song could have just been the most boring song of all time. But for whatever reason, it had whatever we were going through at the time, and the passion of the band, and the mixture of the four guys and all those voices and all the backups on that, or like all of our girlfriends and friends at the time, they would all sing on, those are all gang vocals. So it was just, you know, a special thing.
Tired of Waiting was also a top 10 hit. It went gold. And we have a few fan questions about those two singles. So Lisa Lewis, her question is, where were you not ready to go to? And who are you tired of waiting for? You see what she did there?
Yeah, I see what she did. I think that Not Ready to Go and Tired of Waiting, like, they were actually written, and this is kind of, they were written right after we got rejected by a huge American label. Everybody, because so many Canadian rock bands in the early 2000s were doing so well, like all of the labels would descend on Toronto and you'd showcase for them. And I remember we played for this guy from BMG in America, or it was Sony BMG, and you know, and at the time they were offering pretty crazy record deals to all these bands, and we had this extraordinary gig at the Rivoli. Like, we tore the roof off the place, and we thought, oh man, it's just a matter of time, we're going to get a big record deal and everything's going to work out. And this is, once again, long before Spotify and Instagram and everything. And I remember he came backstage and we're like, okay, so what do you think? Like, we were all like beaming, like, you're never going to see anything better than that, man. And he goes, actually, my cell phone broke, I have to go home. We're like, what? Like, and this is like early days of cell phones too. We're like, Okay, that's a weird time to have to go home for a broken cell phone. And it was the weirdest excuse. And we just thought, oh, he'll call us tomorrow with the big deal. And then I remember Larry called me the next day when we went back to Niagara Falls, and he said, he didn't get it. I'm like, what? He didn't get it. And I said, what do you mean he didn't get it? He goes, he told me I came expecting Train and I got Aerosmith. I'm like, fuck Train. Of course we want to be like Aerosmith. And he's like, well, you're not going to get signed to them. I'm like, okay. And we were just dejected and beat up, and we just went to work again, which is kind of what saved us many times over the years. We just started working on songs again. And that was when we wrote Tired of Waiting and Not Ready to Go. So maybe maybe it sounds so corny, but like maybe Not Ready to Go. I don't want to give up on this dream. I don't want to give up on doing something like this. And maybe I'm just tired of waiting for nothing. I don't even know what I'm waiting for. It was like that. It was like a lot of existential angst that went into those two songs.
We have a question from Trisha Lewis Murphy. She says, Colin is a great storyteller with an amazing memory. Any chance of putting these stories into a book?
I mean, sure. It's definitely something I've thought about. I'm a little bit hesitant with guys of my stature doing rock memoirs, but maybe as little bits or something I can put out to the fans as opposed to like my life in rock and roll or the Colin MacDonald story. I'm no thanks. Yeah.
So final question about that album, and we'll move through the discography. When a band's first album goes platinum, has multiple hits, including a number one, does that mess with your expectations of
100%.
what could happen moving forward? You start to think, hey, this music thing's kind of easy.
It ruins it success. What's the Bob Dylan lyric? There's no success like failure, and failure is no success at all. The thing that happens, so I remember after we were sitting in the limo, I don't know why we were in this, but we were in a nice car, and Larry was there after we were told we went number one. And Larry goes, wow, there's nowhere left to go but down from here. I'm like, oh, thanks a lot, man. And I do think it did create an expectation. And at the same time, even artistically, and we had to fight against this a bit, like you start to think, oh, now every song just needs to be Not Ready to Go. And that's like a recipe for utter disaster. Like it's going to get so stale and so boring so quick. And then at the same time, that's still stuck in your head. Like I remember when we had Not Ready to Go, we're like, when I heard it back, I loved it, but then I remember playing it live. I'm like, this is so boring. Like we say that line like 36 times. I remember we stopped putting it in the set on our very first tour behind House of Ill Fame, and then the label guy was like, "What are you doing? That's your hit." And we're like, "Okay." And then of course it became this huge hit, and then it did make us. I think in the back of our heads, we probably like always thinking, "Wow, will this be like that?" And that can be not good for creativity. I think sometimes.
In 2005, you released the follow-up album, Den of Thieves. Do you think that the record label's rejection, where they said, oh, the band is more Aerosmith, do you think that planted the seed for you to work with legendary producer Jack Douglas on this album that also worked with Aerosmith?
100%. And I remember when I told Gordy what the label guy said, and Gordy's like, yeah, of course you want to be Aerosmith. And like 70s Aerosmith. We're like, yeah, And so then we have success and we have hits and everything's going good. So we definitely get our pick of the litter for who's going to produce our next record. And in hindsight, I mean, I love Den of Thieves. I think it's a crazy collection of songs. I absolutely love Jack Douglas, but we definitely said, okay, whatever we did in House of Fame, we're going to do something totally different, like really bombastic, really like tons of overdubs. Like once again, we finally had a big budget. Like we made House of Fame on a shoestring budget. We begged and borrowed for studio time. And all of a sudden we've got like a lot of money to make a follow-up record. So we're just like, we're going to do everything. We're going to do every single thing we could possibly do on recording, because once again, we had that thought of like, who knows if we get to do this again. So, that's when we have horns brought in, harmonium and string quartets and everything. And we just kind of kitchen sinked it. And I think we made kind of a wonderful, kooky, eccentric rock album that kept having a few hits on it that kept us going.
So the album included 3 top 10 hits: So She's Leaving, Yearning, and Poor Old Broken Hearted Me. Yearning becomes your second number one. The album certified gold. Did you feel relief once all of that success happened for that album?
Yeah, I kind of felt freaked out because I felt like right out of the gates we had so much hype behind that record, whereas House of Fame we had to earn it. Like we kind of started climbing the hill, and and by the time we did go to number one, the album had been out almost for like 6 or 7 months. Like, but with Den of Thieves, it's like the week it came out, I was on Peter Mansbridge talking about opening for the Rolling Stones at the Phoenix, and then going on tour with Robert Plant. And I remember feeling a bit overwhelmed by all that, a little bit of like. I don't love the word imposter syndrome, but that's definitely probably what I was feeling. But I remember we were getting so much hype, and then I didn't know if we were able to live up to that because it was the follow up to a huge hit, and yeah, I remember it being nerve wracking.
So we have some kind words sent in from someone who was a teenager back in 2005 and saw you play live around that time and went on to find success for themselves. This is from Luke Bentham, the singer and guitarist for the Dirty Nil. And Luke
Ah,
says, Colin has always been a very impressive musician. I'll never forget seeing him slay the OLG track opening for Sam Roberts in 2005. I was cheering so loud that he personally acknowledged me. You never forget a moment like that when you're a teenager. Today, I'm proud to count him as a friend and one of the best effing rock and roll singers in the world. So that's from Luke.
I mean, he's an incredible talent, and he's done extraordinary things. And yeah, I feel like that's so nice to hear. I didn't know I was going to get like so many nice compliments, but thank you.
In 2008, you guys released the album No Time for Later. The album features two of my all-time favorite Trews songs, Hold Me in Your Arms and Man of Two Minds. When you finished writing and recording those two songs, as well as Paranoid Freak, did you feel like you had something special on your hands?
Um, yeah, I don't know. Like I remember we started making that record with Jack Douglas, and it was like it was one of those things like we spent even more time touring behind Den of Thieves because we were touring in the States too. So we did all these shows. We opened for Robert Plant, and then we went and did our own headline across the country, and then we went down to the States and played with a bunch of American bands for 2 years straight. So this was, and then we had to get home and start writing songs. And the only thing I can remember is there's two, and this is once again, I wish it was like, oh, I heard Neutral Milk Hotel and wrote this, or I wish I had, but we weren't that kind of band. And I remember we played side stage to Oasis in 2005, and they were playing the Budweiser stage with Jet opening, and we played the after party in the bar. So we were watching Oasis, and I remember that was when I started coming up with the idea for Paranoid Freak, like that, oh, that kind of Britishy sound thing. And I remember thinking that's pretty cool, but it wasn't finished. And with Hold Me in Your Arms, I remember we were back in Toronto, and we were all very stressed out at this time. We were burnt out, and we had a lot of pressure to make another record. It was all pressure we're putting on ourselves. We wanted to keep the train going, and I remember we got a call when we were writing songs that Guns N' Roses wanted us to open for them in the East Coast, but it was Axl with the Chinese Democracy era. It wasn't with Slash and those guys.
I was with Buckethead, or
No, it wasn't Buckethead. Buckethead had left by then, but it was another guitar player. But it was awesome. Like it rocked. It was very industrial. And he had like the braids at the time, and he looked good. He sang good, really good. And when we got off from doing those shows, we were like, oh, we need like a heavy rocker, and that's when Hold Me in Your Arms kind of came about, just from listening to heavy industrial. It wasn't the only influence for that. Like that riff actually came from more of a Black Sabbath thing. It was in Full Time, and it was more of just like a 70s rock thing. And then Sean was actually the one who put it in Halftime and made that drum beat, that syncopated drum beat thing, which I think makes the song. And that's how we got that tune.
if the video game Guitar Hero requested just one song from the Trews to feature in the video game that fans could play along to, what song would you choose? And I have to say, you'd have to consider Hold Me in Your Arms with those
Oh
riffs.
yeah, I think that or Rise in the Wake from our self-titled, because I think that's a really good guitar-y song. Yeah.
The single Hold Me in Your Arms, it spent 22 weeks in the top 10 at rock radio in Canada. The album goes gold, the single goes gold. There's nominations for Junos. When the first album goes platinum, The previous album goes gold. This album goes gold. Do you now just assume, okay, every album we put out is going to go at least gold or platinum? Does that ever
Yeah,
cross your mind?
yeah. You get a little bit. Once again, you start to think, oh, whatever we put out is going to get into the top 10 at radio, and we're going to constantly be this like legendary Canadian band, which was, we were kind of saddled with that title way too early. Like we were being called that on our first record. Everyone's like, oh, this is like the new Tragically Hip. And we're like, no, we're not. Like the Tragically Hip are like our favorite band. And like, they're so much better than we are at this point, especially. And I just remember thinking that was way too premature to have that whole, like, you guys are this Canadian legendary band. And I remember that was as early as our third record, which is pretty early to be calling a bunch of guys in their 20s legendary. And yeah, it definitely factored into some of our kind of like, oh, let's go make a record, whatever. It got maybe a little bit too much like that at that time.
In 2010, you guys released the single Highway of Heroes. It goes platinum and all the proceeds go to the Canadian Hero Fund. Can you share the inspiration behind that song and why you found it was important to use that money to go towards charity?
Well, definitely because of what the song was about and from the perspective that the song was written from. So we have to talk about Gordie Johnson if we're going to talk about Highway of Heroes. I see him glaring at me from the wall behind you. So there was a girl from Antigonish, Nova Scotia named Nicola Goddard. She went to high school with John-Angus and Jack. She used to be on the student council. She would book our band for, talent shows and whatnot. And she joined the Canadian Armed Forces in the early 2000s, and she was mid 2000s probably. And then she was killed in combat in 2006 in Afghanistan. And, I remember hearing about it, awful story. And like Antigonish is such a small town. Everybody knows everybody else. My mom taught Nicola. One of my mom's very close friends was Nicola's mom, Sally. So my mom we were all so interconnected. And in 2009, they were writing a book about her that would become a book called Sunray. And I called my mom. It was like the night or two before we were going on tour and just checking in with mom. And she goes, oh, I just had to do an interview for this book about Nicola. And it's called, and I called Sally afterwards and I said, if that was my kid, I'd be so pissed off that, we don't even know what we're doing over there in that war. And to lose her life like that, I'd just be so angry. And Sally said to my mom, which was quite moving, she said, well, Nicola always wanted to serve in the Canadian Armed Forces. She believed in the best of what we think could be the best idea of this country. And she died doing what she always dreamed of doing. So there has to be something to that. And as soon as she said that, I got emotional, and I was so moved by that. And then John-Angus and I were working on a song, and I was telling him about Nicola, and I said, we should write about that. And he said, well, what's the name of that Highway of Heroes? So we had like a verse and chorus kind of sussed out, and maybe we'll get into this later, but we wrote a lot of songs with Gordie at this time too. A lot of lyrics were written with Gordie. Like we'd have the songs finished and then we'd work on the words with Gordie to make them more sussed out. And I guess part of that was also getting a little bit like making sure that the songs connected and not being too, making sure these messages got through to the listener. And it was such a delicate subject matter. And I called Gordie and I said, we got this thing, we got this idea, and we got these words. And Gordie's like, okay, I'm going to call you back. And then 15 minutes later, he called back with these lines. And I was like, okay. And I sang it into a dictaphone and I started to cry. And I was like, I had no idea. I was like, this is so friggin', I don't know what to do with this. And then me and John-Angus and Gordie, and we're all like, this is powerful. And then 2 nights later, we started our acoustic tour in 2009, and I just broke it out in front of everybody. The band didn't even hear it yet. We just started playing it, and everybody was crying. And I was like, "What? That's never happened with a Trews song before." And and we started playing it every night, and people were really, really connecting to it. And we said, we should probably go in the studio and record this. So we went and booked time at Phase One in Toronto, in Scarborough, and recorded it and put it out. And we didn't want anything from it. We just let's donate all the proceeds to the Canadian Hero Fund, which like provides support for the families of the fallen and stuff. So we figured that would be the only way we could put that out and not feel like we were, you know,
Profiting
capitalizing,
from it.
profiting from it. It would feel really wrong, you know. So yeah, that's the
You
story.
talked about being big fan of the Tragically Hip, and there's a tie-in with them with the next album, 2011's Hope and Ruin. Can you share the tie-in with the Hip with this album?
Well, it all kind of happened at the same time. So we started off in 2010 in January. We had opened for the Tragically Hip for a benefit for our mutual friend Glenn Williams. Rest in peace. We played a gig at the K Rock Center, now the Slush Puppy Center.
Such a
K-Rock,
weird name.
and then the Kingston. We played in Kingston with them, and we were hanging out. And you know, Gord Sinclair was always very friendly with us. Like we really, you know, we absolutely still love the Tragically Hip, but Gord was like felt more like a friend. You know, he was really he was really cool. And we'd always be like, you know, if you guys ever want to just come out to the Bathhouse, which is a Tragically Hip's recording studio, he's like, if you just want to jam and just record it, see what happens, come on out and I'll hang. And we took him up on it in January of 2010. It was this blinding snowstorm, and we hunkered down at the Hip studio with Gord, and Gord pulled out a guitar, and the five of us, it was Gord and the four of us, and we were jamming, and we started writing songs, and we were like, holy crap, this is our dream, because there was no band that was more impressive to us than the Tragically Hip. Like, I remember we opened for the Stones and the Hip kind of close together, or no, we opened but I was more nervous opening for the Hip, just because they were that band for me, you know? And I remember just jamming with Gord, and it was just really, it was very hippie. It was very, like, we just kind of go on a groove, on a D, and then something would start to happen, and it became more of like a groovy, kind of organic record. And that's what became Hope and Ruin. And I remember, so the first few songs that we sent to Larry to show him what we were up to, one of them had no lyrics. The other one was just this like spacey stoner jam. And Larry was like, I do not know what you guys are doing, and I don't like it. Like, you have to come home and make a rock. And we're like, no, we're going to follow this, man. We're going to follow this all the way to the end, you know? And we did. We stuck to it because we thought it was so great. And just working with Gord was just so cool. And I think we made a pretty cool record with him.
So I have some kind words sent in from John Harvey, who is the bass player and vocalist for Monster Truck. And he says, Colin's voice is otherworldly. He has an ethereal quality that sits above the riffs in an almost angelic way. Like he's having an out-of-body experience while still staying in his body. So that's from John Harvey.
You really do get some nice compliments from some people I really respect. I really love John. Yeah. Thank you, John. And I feel the same way about his voice. I actually heard him performing a solo on a Christmas gig we did called the JR. We do this thing called the JR Digs Christmas every year. And the year that we couldn't do it because of COVID, he just performed acoustic solo. And I was like, oh, this is really nice. So, yeah. Thanks, John.
Yeah, he's got one of those crazy rock voices like Chris Cornell or Miles Kennedy or Brent from Shinedown.
Yeah, he's got that for sure. Yeah.
So the Trews has had songs featured in different mediums like NHL video games, Degrassi, the TV show. What has it been like seeing your music in those different mediums?
Cool. I mean, I wish it happened more often. I remember the first time I heard our music in like a beer commercial, it was a bit strange. It was the music from When You Leave from House of Ill Fame, and it was like this Budweiser commercial that ran all summer, and it was no vocal. It was just like and they were like running around trying to get their beer or whatever. And I remember thinking that was strange. I love when it was the opening, any kind of montage for hockey, because I'm a huge hockey fan. I'm a huge Maple Leafs fan.
How dare you?
I know.
I'm from Ottawa, so I have to.
Oh, okay, yeah. There's a good new document. The new is it called Face Off? It features Brady Tkachuk, and anyway, I like Brady. I wish we had Brady Tkachuk, to be honest. I don't like playing against him, but yeah, I remember we had the opening montage of a Leafs Senators Game 7 in 2004, or it was Game 6 or Game 7. I think it was the Game 7, and I remember thinking, that is awesome. And it was not ready to go. And Hold Me in Your Arms was used at the Game 7 of the 2011 when there was the riots. It was Vancouver and the Bruins. So our song opened up that one, and Hope and Ruin was on one, and Vintage Love from a later record was on one in 20. I'll never get tired of that. I especially love the montages. I find the NHL does such a good job of those. And yeah.
You guys have been able to play with Guns N' Roses, with the Rolling Stones, the Tragically Hip, Robert Plant from Led Zeppelin. And when you think, okay, I mean, who else? How does it get any better? In 2012, you played with Bruce Springsteen, and you not only shared the stage by being on the bill with him, you actually got on the stage with Bruce Springsteen. How does this come together?
Magic. Magic. I remember it was 2012 summer, and I heard that Bruce Springsteen was playing Magnetic Hill in Moncton, and he didn't have any opening acts. I don't think Bruce ever has any opening acts. And I called management and I said, we should really look into if he is having opening acts. Like, we will. I mean, I'll load his gear in for him if we can open that show. And it turns out, oddly enough, for whatever reason, in the summer of 2012 in Moncton, New Brunswick, the Bruce Springsteen show was not selling as much as you would have thought. So this was a time when they were doing AC/DC and U2, and it's like 80,000 tickets were sold to those things. And Bruce's was still like, I don't know, 30,000. I mean, if 30,000 is a light night for you, you're a rock icon. But so they added Tom Cochrane to the bill, and they added the Trews, and we were the first up, and then Tom, and it was all last minute. It was like within 3 weeks of asking, we were added to the bill, and we were down there doing the show. And I remember getting up, having a good show. Like, people were coming in. It was a big room, a big field, and we were like, we gotta get a picture with Bruce Springsteen. I mean, like, we can't. And Lenny Goncharov, our guitar tech tour manager at the time, God love him, very ambitious young man, went to Bruce's camp and said, look, the guys would absolutely just love to get a picture with Bruce Springsteen. And he was told from their road manager, Bruce, before he does his gig, he likes to be alone to get, he does a 3-hour show, so he has to get warmed up, and he's not really into like meeting people. But if you guys hang out right by the backstage, right before he goes on, you might get a chance to meet Bruce. So we're like, okay. And we all just stood around, and we saw, like, Magnetic Field's this huge field. It's not really set up for, it's all makeshift things to make the show happen. It's like makeshift buildings that are just erected just for the event. And so a whole bunch of Escalades start coming into the grounds with all of the band getting out. Like, so all the backup singers and Niles Lofgren and it would have been Jake Clemens, and all these guys were getting out and heading to the stage, and we're like, oh man, this is so cool. And then in the background, there was all these Escalades, and then someone was ripping around on a little golf cart. And the security was so like strict there. I'm like, oh man, whoever's ripping around that golf cart is going to get thrown the fuck out of here. They were just watching. I'm like, oh man, this isn't going to be good for whoever that is. And as he was ripping around, like really riding, not responsibly, like, and as it got closer, I'm like, Jesus Christ, that's Bruce Springsteen. And it was Bruce driving the golf cart with little Steven and Max Weinberg on the back. And he was just ripping around, just having fun, like on a go-kart. And he drives right up to us on a friggin' golf cart, and he says, how you doing? I'm like, and it was like meeting G.I. Joe, or like his chin, like everything. He just looked like it was like the all-American hero personified. That's what Bruce Springsteen looks like. He looks like your archetypal American hero. And he came up and he said, how was your set? I'm like, oh, it was good, man. Like, he came right up to me, and I was like, oh, cool. He came up to me, and he was like, where are you from? I'm like, well, we're from Antigonish. He's like, where's that? And I'm like, it's like 2.5 hours down that way. He goes, cool. Do you know Twist and Shout? I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah. He goes, come sing it with me in the encore. So we're like, okay, Bruce Springsteen, we will sing that with you in the encore. And at the time, once again, we were in the middle of, hundreds of days of touring. And we all just said, okay, nobody drink anymore, because we can't be wasted getting up with Bruce Springsteen. So we had to spend like 3 hours drinking water and maybe nursing light beer. That was the height of our concern at that time. And sure enough, Bruce invited us up 3 hours later, and here's the Trews. And then he did the whole count off, and we just did Twist and Shout. And he kept looking back with this huge smile, and I tried to like do these crazy high harmonies, hoping that he might notice, but I think he just looks at everybody like that. But I was like, it was incredible.
Do you know if anybody caught that on camera? Is there any way to see that on YouTube? Does it live on somewhere?
It's on YouTube, The Truths with Bruce Springsteen. You can check it out wherever you get your YouTube, which is YouTube.
That's amazing. I saw Bruce Springsteen at the Rogers Center in Toronto, which I guess is about 55,000 people. So this was a decade ago. And he played over 4 hours just by himself. Again, no opener, 4 hours. You're like, how does this guy have this stamina at his age?
He's just built different, man. I felt like I was watching like John the Baptist coming down from the hill and telling everybody that he's seen the light. Like that's how it felt watching him.
So in 2014, you guys released the self-titled album, The Trews. The first single, What's Fair is Fair, goes to #2. And you work with super producer Gavin Brown. This guy made some of the most iconic albums for Billy Talent, 3 Days Grace, Metric. He did albums for The Hip. He did albums for Bare Naked Ladies. And I have some kind words sent in from Gavin Brown. And he says,
Oh, no.
Colin is one of the best singers I've ever worked with. Great poise, great tone, and always shows up 100%. That's from Gavin.
Wow, that's probably the best compliment out of all of them, because I know Gavin, it wouldn't be he's not usually one to dish out those kind of kind words, but yeah, I mean, like for us with Gavin, we were always told, that's the gold standard for rock bands. So when House of Ilk, like the thing is, when I talk about all of the success we were having, it was great. Don't get me wrong. But there was bands coming out of Canada that were having way more success than that too. Like Billy Talent's first record was just a juggernaut. 3 Days Grace's record, we were on tour with them when they got added to K-Rock in LA and in New York. So we were like, yeah, it felt great, but we were like, but we're not as big as Nickelback or Billy Talent or 3 Days Grace or other bands that we loved even more, like Sam Roberts and those bands. Like we were like, okay, so there's a long ways to go. And we were always told, Gavin Brown is the gold standard, because look at all of the success he's had with these young bands. And it never really worked out. And Gavin kind of, I don't know, we were always working with different guys at the time. And when we heard the Metric record in '09 that he did with like Gimme Sympathy and
Fantasies
and Fantasies, we were like, that's a great record. Like that takes all of that cool, arty, eccentric, cool art bands thing and then makes it like stadium rock. And it's like, it doesn't lose any of everything you love about Metric, but it also just brings it to like a whole other level,
All 5 singles from that album sound like hit singles.
They're such hit singles. And I was like, that was the record where I was like, whoa, like Gavin, like Metric's an amazing band, but I was like, well, Gavin does have something that really works, And it wasn't until 2013 we were demoing for what would become that record, and we were sending stuff around to a million different guys. One of the guys that worked with U2, but it wasn't Dan Lanois or any of those guys or Mark Howard. It was another guy who worked on like the pop record. I can't remember his name, but we had a bunch of, we're just putting our feelers out. And Gavin got back to John-Angus one day and said, "Hey, I heard your demos. I want to make your record." And we just started working with him. And he had a whole system. It was a whole different way of making records. We would play a couple times, and it was the first time we went through like machines where they kind of clean it up in post-production, and that felt a little bit cold at the time. But I think the record sounds really, really great, and it's got some really great songs on it. So
I think he did this Thornley album here as well.
he certainly did.
I interviewed their drummer Sekou Lumumba, who's with Big Wreck now, and he was saying that recording the drums on that Thornley album, he had to record without any cymbals, and then separately they recorded just the cymbals to be able to isolate both in the mix. Like, just how do you do that as a drummer? It's weird.
It was the same with us. Everything was like put through a processor, and you did everything. It was like all about making the most like I guess not clean, but like everything was defined. Like it was very meticulously made. And for a band like us, which is kind of all about just performance, we would just play it a couple times, and the guy was like, "Good, moving on." And we're like, "No, we didn't get it yet." And then we hear the playback, and it would sound phenomenal. So I mean, like, he's definitely got a way of doing things and he's definitely one of those characters in the Canadian music business that will be written about for hundreds of years to come. I mean, like, everybody's got a Gavin Brown story, and Yeah, he's a great, probably a genius, super talented guy. And, those guys are complicated people.
I think the fans love that self-titled album because I have three questions that I'm going to rapid fire through about that album from the fans. So Debbie Crawford Hart asks, are there songs that might be tougher to sing now versus when you were younger? And if so, can you name a few? There are a few older songs that I love, for example, In the Morning, and it's rare that they play it.
Um, some songs I'm like, yeah, they're difficult because I definitely stretch my vocal range as much as I can. I think that makes for better sounding recordings. Like when a singer's at the height of his range, it sounds powerful, like anybody, whether it be, John Lennon or when a singer's really working for it, it sounds good to me. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's always like high rock singing. Like sometimes a singer's just singing in a lower range, but they're working for it, and that creates this tension which is very electric. So it's better for me as a vocalist to really push past my limits in the studio. It makes for a more immediate sounding recording as far as I'm concerned. And then some of those songs I'm just sitting on it because I'll do like live streams for our Patreon fans, and they'll ask for certain songs and I'll be like, oh my God, it's so hard to sing that. And so, yeah, some of the songs are difficult to sing as I get older. And then songs like In the Morning, that's like the greatest Trews song that I think is almost a non-Trews song because I don't find it fits in with the set list on a usual. If we're going to do that song, it was always great. Like I used to be with Serena Ryder, and we were partners for years. And then she would come up and sing with me for that song, and that was great. Like when you could bring in like a superstar, amazing female vocalist to really get the crowd popping, that was awesome. But that song is so good and so but it's nothing like anything else in the set. So I find that it has to go either really late or not at all. Like, but when you play that song, I feel like In the Morning is the song that non-Trews fans would love, and Trews fans love it too. But it doesn't feel as Trewsy as the rest of the set. So I think that's why sometimes it gets lost in the fold.
Wyatt Simonato asks, will the self-titled album ever get a vinyl release?
I'm surprised it hasn't had one already, but I will look into that. I will have an answer for you.
And the last question about that album is from Justin Land. Who is New King written about?
That's a good story. Another top 10 single for us that I'm not so sure was worthy of top 10-ness, but it was up there. New King was, okay, so in 2013, a little dark spot on Trews history. So one of the reasons we were the first indie band to go #1 on rock radio was that Larry, and I'm not sure he was the first person to do this, but he definitely was early adopter of this. He found a way that he could keep the band indie, which made you eligible for Factor grants and Video Fact, because Canada has been so great in bolstering its art community, that it does give grants to bands and to make music, and that's wonderful. And we wouldn't have had a career without it. So what happened was, if you were signed directly to a label, at least back at this time, you were not eligible to get grants. So if you had signed to Warner Music or EMI Direct or Universal, you had to go through them, and they would have to pay for your record, but it made you ineligible for Factor money, right? And Factor money is like, you can forgive it. I mean, we paid back pretty much all of what we ever borrowed because we had so much success with it. Basically, I think it's a little bit more lenient than a record label. When they spend X amount of dollars and you don't make a profit, you get dropped, right? But Larry was like, we're an indie band, and we licensed through Sony BMG, Universal, Network, all these other labels. So it was actually kind of like the perfect storm for us because we could kind of do whatever we wanted. Larry was a fan of our music, so he kind of let us make the kind of records we wanted, and he would license it through a major label. But as a result of that, we were getting a lot of Factor money, right? So in 2013 on Vice, back when Vice was considered cool, and now I don't know what it's all about now, there was a guy out of Calgary or out of Alberta, and he did this whole hit piece on all these bands that claim to be indie or rock, and they're getting all this money. And he started listing how much money we were all getting, and we were the top of the list, and it was like $1 million or something, which we ended up paying back because of the records we sold and the touring we did. Like we didn't just get that money without having to pay it back, but on paper it looked like, why the hell did these guys get all this money, you know? So there was us on the list, Broken Social Scene, Metric, Dan Mangan. There was a whole bunch of it. We were the most like mainstream rock. Everybody else was kind of like indie rock kind of bands, and we were like mortified when we heard that. It just sounded so horrible. And Vice was cool then, and we were just like, oh, this is so dejecting. And I remember we were all kind of freaked out. We were like, you know, our press agent was like, well, how are you guys going to address this? Like, it's such a weird thing to talk about, you know, like grant money and how much money you get to do your records. And we thought it might have been over for us at the time. We were like, this is awful. Like, this is not good. And
not all press is good press.
Not all press is good press. And I remember we were so pissed off at this son of a gun who wrote this piece about us, and he made it sound like we were just like the Trews. Are they even a band anymore? We're like, fuck you, man. And we were just so like, what an asshole. And I remember we didn't respond. I remember the only guy who responded was Dan Mangan, and when he responded, we were like, nah, don't respond. Like, don't. I'm not going into this knife fight. Like, I don't know what to say. And so we wrote New King about him, and like that's what that song's about, the bitter hipster hick, because he was from Melbourne. Anyway. That's what we just wrote that, like, you know, all hail the new king now, just here to bring me down with his nice opinions. And it was our angry song about him. So there you have it.
So in 2016, you guys put out the greatest hits album, Time Capsule. Most bands never have one hit single. So how much of an honor is it to have a greatest hits album? Enough hits to fill an album.
I mean, it was amazing. I mean, like, it's just all, I mean, once again, like you know, it all feels so impossible when I talk about it. And at the time, it was just the next thing we had to do. I think it was had to get out of a record deal, or we were getting out of a record deal, and we wanted to do a great, like, usually the greatest hits is kind of your exit strategy. And we had amassed enough, and they wanted one, and it's since gone gold as well, which is cool. And I remember a bunch of our friends down. We were on tour in America, and we're not, you know, we still tour in the van and play bars in America. And a lot of our bands are like, "You guys have like a greatest hits record out?" And like, yeah, I mean, like, that's crazy, but we do.
In 2018, you release the album Civilianaires. There's 4 singles. It gets nominated for the band's 6th Juno nomination. This is for Rock Album of the Year. To me, that's a great nomination where it's based on the entire catalog of that album. And my question as a fan is, there's 4 singles. No More Saying Goodbye is my favorite song on the album. That sounds like a hit single to me. How is that not a single?
Dude, don't get me started on that record. I love that record, and I thought we had some really great songs. And I don't know if it's just because of how old we were at the time and where our band was in our career. It's like, usually when a band puts out a greatest hits record, it's kind of like done, you know, but we were like, absolutely not. We want to make something interesting. And we hooked up with this great young producer named Derek Hoffman, who's an absolute brilliant talent. And we made this record that we thought was so great, with so many great songs. And I just thought, you know, we led with the wrong single. You know, and I think No More Saying Goodbye should have been a single, and lots of shoulda couldas on that record. But you know, it ended up getting, you know, we had a really great tour behind it, and you know, it ended up getting a lot of positive press, and it was cool.
2020 hits, global pandemic, shakes up everything, especially the music industry. In 2021, you guys released the album Wanderer. What were the challenges in writing, recording, and releasing an album during a global pandemic?
I mean, everything. But it's funny, the Wanderer record started because Chris Gormley joined our band after the Greatest Hits record. We had Chris Gormley and him and his brother Matt. We started writing a lot of songs with those guys, and we really felt like we had a good chemistry with them, just creatively. And so what became the record Wanderer actually started out before the pandemic. It actually started with us going down to Nashville in 2019. We'd won some studio time because one of the songs off of Civilianaires, Time Speeding Up, won an American songwriter award, and we got free studio time at this really great studio in Nashville. And Rich Robinson from the Black Crowes was living there at the time, so he wanted to work with us and produce it. So we actually started that record with him in 2019, and we did Hidden Gem and Faith and Fumes and Permission, which were 3 songs that ended up on Wanderer. And that was the original start of that record. We were like, okay, this is going to be what we're going to do. And we were going to, okay, we're going to reconvene here in March. We're going to come back down to Nashville. We're going to go back to Canada, do a quick tour of Ontario, and then we're going to come back down to Nashville and finish the record with Rich Robinson. That was 2020, so that was out of the cards right there. So we had those 3 songs, and then the pandemic hit. So those are the 3 pre-pandemic songs, and everything else was was during pandemic. So I don't know how we got through it. I guess it's the way you get through anything, just one day at a time, and if that's too much, 1 hour at a time, And we my first reaction to having to go home from tour and stay at home was just to start writing. That was my way of staying grounded and calm, even if it was like, I didn't care if the song was good, bad, or indifferent. I was just going to write every day. And that's where a lot of the songs started to come from. And then the other guys were sitting around doing the same. And and we kind of just worked at it in little chunks. Like we would do Zoom writing sessions like this because we weren't allowed to be around each other. And anytime, there was like, remember they would be like, oh, this week people can get together, but not the next week. So like anytime we'd have times where we could get together, we'd get into a studio with like Derek Hoffman, and we went to the Jukasa studio up in Caledonia, which is an incredible studio. And we did like 3 songs there, which were Lonely in the City, Another Year Zero, and Can't Afford to Be Lonely. And we did those songs when we could get together, and then we got told we couldn't be together again. And then we get, and then the restrictions would lift again, and we get together at John-Angus's attic in Hamilton, and we wrote I Want to Play and Where Did You Go and stuff like that, and some songs like that. And it just was like piecemeal right up until the end. And then we got into the studio for 6 songs with Eric Ratz, who's an incredible, legendary, I'm sure he probably produced some of those records, or at least engineered on them. And we finished 6 songs with him, and that's how we got the record. But it was like the album had 3 different producers, or 4 if you count John-Angus, because he produced a couple too. So it was that was a hodgepodge record. And actually having that as a mission throughout the pandemic was really helpful. Like to have we're going to try to make a great record. And then we wrote the pandemic song, which I Want to Play, which was like kind of the only hit off the record, which, in hindsight, I think it's a catchy song, a bit novelty. And, as soon as the pandemic went away, I kind of like, this song's kind of lost its relevance, but when else are you going to write a song about that situation? So.
Since the album came out, I've had the song I Want to Play on my great songs playlist on Spotify. So anytime I hear a great song, I add a song to it. And it's been on there since the pandemic. So thank you for that little 3 or 4 minute chunk of joy during those dark times.
Thanks, man. That was kind of the idea. It's like, and I made it about like a relationship because it was almost too big of a thing to just write about. So, but thank you. I'm glad you liked it.
During the pandemic, you played a very important role for somebody, and that person is Josh Traeger, the drummer for the Sam Roberts Band. And he sends in the following words. He said, Colin was our COVID wedding witness, ring bearer, and musical guest. Is there anything this guy can't do? But seriously, I've been so fortunate to rock with him over the years. And rock we have. From the Rockies to the Rock of Gibraltar, to the Rock of Ages musical. Colin has become one of the most important people in my life. I guess he always was, but we just needed a little patience and a really good monitor man. So when he sent me that, he's like, you probably won't get most of what I'm saying, but Colin will understand.
Yeah, that's very funny and very touching. Me and Josh became fast best friends after he subbed for our drummer. We actually went to Spain to play for the military in 2019, and Chris Gormley had booked some time away with his wife at the time, and so Josh filled in, and me and him just hit it off like gangbusters. We both had very similar touchstones for why we got into music, a lot of the same bands, and we started all these jokes around Guns N' Roses because we used to love those guys when we were kids, and we start sending each other really ridiculous Axl Rose quotes as text messages, but pretending to talk to each other about something serious. So what he was saying there is, yes, we played in the Rockies because he's had to fill in on a few occasions for us. So he's played in the Rockies with us. We've played on the Rock together because we played with Sam Roberts in Newfoundland. And the Rock of Gibraltar, we literally drove by on our way to the airport coming home from the gig in Spain. And I remember it was still during my drinking days, but I was so hungover, and we were just like laughing hysterically about just growing up listening to Guns N' Roses and Use Your Illusions 1 and 2, and then we would just text each other in quotes from Guns N' Roses, which is hilarious. So he wrote just then, "We needed a little patience and a really good monitor guy," which is a direct quote from an Axl Rose video on YouTube. And those montages of Axl Rose stage banter are excellent. They're funny. So I love you, Josh. He's one of my best friends, and yeah, over the pandemic, him and Aaron's wedding had to get postponed because no one could get together. Then finally everybody could get together, or no, it wasn't even that. They said we can get married at City Hall, but we need a witness and somebody to hold the ring and just be there. It was going to be me and a camera guy, and then by the time that came around, we were allowed to have like 25 people in a place. So now it was people. He got the Elma Combo in Toronto to do the wedding, and they invited their closest family and friends. And then I asked John-Angus to come play. We played Something by the Beatles, me and my brother, for them, and then I held the ring. And I remember just looking around the room thinking, none of these people have any idea who I am. Like, they don't know my relationship. Like me and Josh are just new friends, and I'm here like doing this most important thing in his life. And me and Josh, right from the time we met, we kind of knew we'd be friends forever. But everybody else, I'm just like, who the hell is this guy holding the ring? And like his grandmother and sisters and brothers were there, and I felt a little bit like, no, it's okay. Like, this was supposed to be like a COVID thing, but anyway, it was beautiful and it was wonderful, and I'm so honored to have gotten to do it.
So the album that you put out during the pandemic, that was a bright light. That was a positive thing for a lot of fans during those dark and uncertain times. And I have some words sent in from a few fans that talk about that. So Roxanne Byers says, "Do you think the work you did keeping us, sane during COVID grants you saint status?" Because I do. So that's from Roxanne. And then Tim McCormick says, "Your music helped get me through the COVID lockdowns. They live in Ontario too and went through the same quarantine I did. What were your hobbies during that period? Are you into hiking and fishing like most Canuck men?" That's from Tim.
I definitely like hiking. I don't do much fishing. I love being outdoors and exercising, and and as far as those, everybody keeps saying, "Oh, you kept us sane with these." So every Friday I would go live on our socials and do an all requests thing, and honestly, it was keeping me sane. It wasn't. I was doing it solely for selfish reasons, and honestly, like, it's not the most flattering way to play music. It's like through a little speaker on your phone or your computer, but it just kept me. I always knew every Friday night at 7 o'clock I was going to go live for the fans on our social media, and it gave me some kind of structure during the week, and even just if it was just an hour to connect with people, and so it saved me as much as it saved anybody else.
You've talked about all the different drummers that have played for the Trews over the years. And in 2024, Theo McKibben joins the band. And I have some kind words sent in from Theo because he was one of the guys that sent me a message saying, "You got to get the Trews on here." This is what Theo says. He says, "What's not to love about Colin? As a human, he's intelligent, open, kind, caring, thoughtful, and holy shit, can he ever make me laugh. As a musician, I can say I have the utmost respect for him. He's talented as all hell, and you'd be hard-pressed to find anybody more dedicated to their craft than him. I'm someone who values hard work, and I have a lot of admiration for what I've seen him do in the pursuit of greatness and the effort that I watch him put in and day out. I guess what sums it all up is I feel eternally grateful to be a part of this ride, and I count myself lucky to call Colin a friend." So that's from Theo.
That's lovely. Oh, yeah. So many nice things. I mean, I love Theo. Theo was like this magical thing that landed on our laps without even having to try. Like, it was just one of those timing things where Monster Truck went on a hiatus, and we needed a drummer quick because Gormley wasn't going to be able to continue, and I loved him immediately. I thought he was just so good, and he's like probably the best drummer, like that, like one of the best drummers of all time, as far as I'm concerned. Like he just rocks. Like he rocks, and and to hear that, yeah, I'm floored. But it's so nice to know that somebody that I respect so much also respects me.
We've made it all the way from your earliest musical memory to the newest album that gets released in a few weeks on October 24th. The album's called The Bloody Light. Half the album is already available to listen to. How has the feedback been so far for those 6 songs that we can listen to as fans?
Well, we had our first number one since Yearning with The Breakdown, which was on rock radio, which was incredible. All of the feedback's been really, really positive. Our big test is always how many songs can fit into the set, and so far, I think 4 of the 6 have been mainstays. So The Breakdown, The Bloody Light, Don't Get Lost in the Dark, and Manifest are in the set all the time, and they elevate the show. They're not just there between the songs that everybody knows really well. They feel like they go somewhere that's not been gone, somewhere that we haven't gone to before, and they're captivating. Like you can tell the crowd's not running. Like usually when you play a new song, it's the most dejecting feeling for a lead singer, especially. You see somebody walk to the bathroom or walk to get a beer, and you know what? That just happens in life. People have to use the bathroom and they have to get a beer. But I take it so personally. Like I'm like, oh my God, they hate it. They hate it so much. They're going to the bathroom. And I'll get in my head about it. And especially when we're doing a new thing, it's quite vulnerable because you're playing to a crowd and they're knowing all these hits. And it's kind of, when you're lucky like us and you've had songs on the radio over the years, it becomes a little bit easier because, you know, you can play the songs that people know and they'll rock and it's all good. But like when you have to go do something new, you're putting yourself out there and it's vulnerable. And so far with the songs from The Bloody Light, every time we do those, no one's going to get a beer or going to the bathroom. And I'm like, that means these songs are working. So it's the bathroom beer test.
So I've listened to those 6 songs many times with a good pair of studio headphones. I think the 6 are awesome, and I think there's a ton of variety throughout them. So it's musically diverse. There's the hits in there. I think there's something for everyone. It's great studio headphone listening where there's a lot of stuff going on and there's changes in tempo and time signatures and hooks here and harmonies. There's lots of great stuff going on. So I want to start by saying, as a random person here, I love the 6 new songs, and I'm curious to hear what fans can expect from the other half of the album, the 6 songs that will get released on the 24th.
It's kind of all of a piece. Like when you hear the record, I feel like putting out the 6 songs is different than when you're going to listen to this. I know people don't necessarily listen to music like this anymore, but it's a really good 12 set of songs in the order that it comes on the record. And you'll just have to listen to the record all the way through. It even makes those 6 songs we released on their own sound different. And this is where I come up against the new way of doing things. Like everybody's putting out singles out of context, and I am an old school like album guy. Like I grew up on like Automatic for the People or discovering Aerosmith Rocks or the Rolling Stones Exile on Main Street, where like the record is really telling the whole story. And I really feel like The Bloody Light is that album. And I think that when people, if they buy the vinyl or listen to it all the way through the way it was written and recorded, it's going to tell a nice story. And I love the sequencing of it. So I think if you hear the other 6 songs on their own, it's going to be what you liked about those first 6 songs. You know, there's some hitty stuff, there's some kind of more mellow things, and but I think as a piece, it's a great, one of our best records as an album, I think.
So The Breakdown is the band's 3rd number one, and it's the band's 20th top 10 single. That's a milestone. Hitting 20 that's insane, man. And what does it mean to you getting that kind of support at radio 22 years after Not Ready to Go went to number one?
I mean, it's amazing, and it does make a difference. Like everybody thinks, oh, it's streaming, nothing. It doesn't. I know I'm up there every night, and people know The Breakdown because they heard it on the radio. And I think rock radio is somewhere, like we built our career off Canadian rock radio, and it definitely feels good to be back in their graces for this round. And I hope it continues. I mean, you never know. You can't predict those things, but I definitely felt good turning on the radio and hearing the new song, because it's always awesome to hear Not Ready to Go or Hope and Ruin or Paranoid Freak or What's Fair is Fair or Rise. Like, it's great to hear the old songs, but when you hear the new one, it hits a little bit more. Like, you're like, we're here. Like, this is happening right now, you know.
The song The Bloody Light, you guys released that 8 months ago with an accompanying music video, and then the album doesn't get released until a few weeks from now, so that's like an 8 or 9 month gap. Does it feel like you've been waiting forever for this album to come out and people to enjoy your hard work?
Yeah, it's such a weird time now, you know, because everybody's like releasing song after song after song after song every day on Spotify, and it's kind of the new way. But it's like, and sometimes I'm like, but some of it gets lost. Like, you can't. It's like, I think there's got to be a little bit of quality over quantity, and I feel like we're in a quantity time now. It's like there's too much of everything, so it's like it's a bit weird to, you know, I don't know. Part of me just wants to put out the record and that's it. But that's not the way the world works anymore. So like a lead up time for a record back in, you know, 10 years ago, it was like, I don't know, 3 months, you'd put a single out and then the record would come out and that would be it. But now it's like, no, you got to put like a song out every 4 months and make sure your Spotify spins are up. I'm like, I don't even know, man. I also don't even know about those metrics, because now we're on the road with bands that like, they've got 1.5 million followers and there's not even a single person there to watch them. It's like, I don't know how these metrics, I don't know what they mean. And I think everybody that's really going into like turning music into like data gathering, it's a slippery slope. You know, a lot of my favorite records of all time, you know, some of them have billions of streams, but others are like they don't. It doesn't make the work any less, you know? So I don't know. It seems like a long lead time, and I don't want to be the old man complaining, but here I am.
Earlier, you mentioned you love when vocalists push their voice, whether it's the low range or the high notes. And I find that in this collection of 6 songs that I can listen to from the new album, that there is that range in your vocals, that you're really pushing the low with songs like Love or Pain. You're pushing the low and high in the Bloody Light. And we have a lot of musicians that listen to the podcast. For the young musicians that are singers, do you have any advice on how they can really push their voice without blowing their voice? Like how to project?
I have an exact answer to that. So there's one book that saved my life. It's called Roger Love's Set Your Voice Free. I found it in a discount bargain bin at a Chapters in Pennsylvania in 2007. And you can get it on audiobook or you can get it on just book. And it was a lifesaver. It gave me so many warm-ups that I do to this day. And it's allowed me to sing in a register that most guys my age would not be able to sing at. But it's because I do those warm-ups every day and then on the road, and then I do warm downs as well, and it's all from that book. And there's another guy I just discovered, and I'm gonna have to take my phone off airplane mode just to find him. But his name is Lucas Milcham, and he's an opera singer, and he's got these warm-ups on, and it's on YouTube, and it's just all opera singer warm-ups, and it's phenomenal. So Lucas Milcham, I follow him on Instagram. I'm gonna just spell his name, but I'm telling you, for any rock singers out there, you're going to live and die by your warm-ups, but also your warm downs. So like, it's like going to the gym. If you don't warm down after working out, you're going to pull something or hurt something, and the same with singing. So I noticed a lot of singers are still warming up, but then they don't do the warm down. So always do a 5-minute cool down. Like, you know, get away from the band when you get off stage, wherever you are, just find your own space and do a warm down. It'll save your voice. Like, I've had nights where, you know, I've sang for 2.5 hours, and like I get to that point where, you know, no matter how much warming up you do start to like burn out certain register. And but the warm downs have been, the next morning I can go and do radio interviews and still have a voice and be able to sing the next night. So Lucas Meacham, Meachem, he's a lyric baritone, and he's got these phenomenal opera warm-ups, and I actually do them every day now because I just want to stay in shape to play at all times.
I've never heard a singer talk about the warm down afterwards, so that's good advice.
Yeah, I mean, and like when you're in your 20s and you blow your voice out, it'll come back. You know what I mean? Like you're young, but as you get older, it takes longer to recover. But I would say to any young singers out there, you're gonna extend your career as a live performer, the quicker you get onto those warm ups and warm downs. It doesn't mean you can't have fun. Just do the warm down and then go have fun. You know.
We have a fan question from Heather Lee McLean. She says, I've always been interested in learning about how an artist's mind works. As a songwriter, what inspires you to come up with amazing lyrics? Personal experiences? Do you write better in different surroundings? Listening to other music? As I am listening to Love or Pain, I feel it. What a gift to be able to move people with your talent.
Amazing. That's the whole goal. That's what everybody wants to do, and it's not just me. Sometimes I need help. You know, I write a lot of lyrics. I write pretty much every day, but sometimes I can get really lost in them, and I can get too far down the wormhole of a certain idea. And sometimes it takes a guy like Brett Emmons or Chris Kirby or Gordie Johnson or Simon Wilcox to help me kind of flesh out my ideas and make sure they're more emotionally direct. Sometimes it just takes work. Once I get the right lyrics, I'm pretty good at knowing how to interpret them and sing them so that they're going to resonate. But that all starts with just trying to resonate with myself, you know. And so I think everybody's creative. I think everybody can be an artist. I think everybody should write. I think everybody should paint. I think even if it's bad, it's still great. Was it Kurt Vonnegut who said, like, just do shit, just make stuff, create? I'm a big advocate for that. I think it's good for your mental health. I think it's good for your well-being. You don't have to show it to anybody. You don't have to release it. I tend to work that way. I just write what I write and I just put it all out there. But I've been very, very fortunate to have excellent sounding boards in my career that have really allowed me to hone in on what I'm actually trying to say and what emotionally I'm trying to get across. And I've only gotten better at that as I've gone, but I've had a lot of help.
You've mentioned that throughout your life, you've dealt with depression at different points. Is the song Don't Get Lost in the Dark about depression?
I mean, it could be, but it's more about a person I know I love very much going through a rough time health-wise. And I'm not going to name who it is, but I wanted to make sure that that person knew I was thinking about them. And I guess when you say don't get lost in the dark, it does, you know, it's definitely someplace I've been many times in my life. And I've had to work really hard at not staying there. And I've had to get sober because of it. And I've had to be in therapy. And I've had to do lots of stuff to keep myself from getting too down. That's for sure.
If some of our listeners are currently going through depression, do you have any advice on what you found has worked for you over the years? So there's always therapy. Is there anything else that you find?
Therapy's been really, really helpful for me. It's so expensive though, and I just wish it was part of people's. I know it's part of their medical benefits for some jobs, but I wish it was part of OHIP as well, just so people that don't have benefits or they're like freelance workers could still get access. I find talking it out has been really helpful, but talking it out in a place that's safe, not with somebody that's going to judge you. You know, it's good to have people that you're close to where you can just say what you need to say and get it off your chest, because holding on to that stuff can be really damaging. But at the same, and if you can't have that, I found just writing helps. And I don't mean writing a song or writing a book, just writing down what you're feeling, just to get it out of your psyche and onto the page, just so you're not any way that you don't have to carry it. And I found all that stuff very helpful. Meditating, exercise, sometimes like, I know some people have severe depression, and this is not, I'm not trying to give medical advice at all, and sometimes you just can't get out of bed. At that point, I do wish you could go see a doctor, or, be very careful and be very gentle with yourself. But if you're just going through a down period, sometimes it's good just to have a schedule that you make for yourself. And no matter how you feel, like, I'm just going to get up, I'm going to journal, I'm going to meditate, I'm going to make oatmeal. And you almost do it point form. Because sometimes the feelings and the stuff that whatever you're going through can be so overwhelming that you can't, if you're just going on your feelings, you're not going to want to do anything. So sometimes it's just almost good to just have just your list and just check it off. And you know what? Get it done. And that's enough for the day, and I hope, and then life can be so hard because people have to make a living and they've got families and they've got kids and they've got bills and there's so much, but try to carve a little bit of space there for your ability to just kind of process whatever you're going through, because otherwise it can come out in such negative ways.
So that's all great advice. And I have the final quote sent in here, and this is from Stuart Cameron, guitarist for the Crash Test Dummies. He says, seeing the MacDonalds with their family is always a joy. They all support each other so very much. So short and sweet from Stuart Cameron.
Yeah, I love Stuart. He's a great guy, and I mean we go way back. He's a beautiful guy, and love you, Stuart.
The final few questions here. You have 5 upcoming shows currently scheduled for the rest of 2025. In October, there's a show in London, England. November, there's shows in Barrie, Ontario, and Red Deer, Alberta. December, there's shows in Toronto and London, Ontario. What can fans expect if right now they go and purchase a ticket to these shows?
More of the same, only better. The shows have gotten much better over the years, and we're getting really we're becoming much more aware of how to shake it up in a really cool way. And you won't be disappointed. If you love the Trews, you're going to love it even more. And if you never heard of the Trews, I don't think you'll be disappointed. We put a lot into our live shows, and we like to make sure people leave with the wow factor, and they're just like, whoa, that blew me away. That's what we're aiming for. So I haven't heard a lot of bad reports about the Trews live shows, I'll tell you that.
And because the Trews are known as such a hardworking live touring band, I got a lot of fan questions about the live show. So I have 5 fan questions specifically about concerts. So let's do just a rapid fire through these fan questions so we can acknowledge them. So from Sally MacDonald, she asks, being a band known to tour constantly, I'd love to know which venue or city is an absolute go-to every time that never disappoints.
Oh, there's so many. Halifax at the Marquee Club, that's probably the most consistently awesome. The Commodore Ballroom in Vancouver. I mean, the Burton Cummings Theater in Winnipeg. I mean, there are so many good ones, but those are the 3 that stick out right away.
Todd Juice asks, what's a song you haven't covered live that is on a bucket list?
Oh, so many. I want to cover Strawberry Fields Forever is I think the greatest song ever written in rock and roll pop music. And I would love to cover that, but it's a little bit, that's a difficult one to do but how do you top John Lennon and the Beatles version of that? But that's my bucket list song to cover.
Billy Joe asks, how much of the fan interactions at shows, like song requests, change a set list?
Not as much as I want them to. When I do my live streams, I just let everybody ask me what they want to hear. And then when we do the trio shows, which is just me and my brother and Jack, we'll kind of throw the set list out halfway through the show and just be like, what do you want to hear? And I love that. To me, it's a much better show when you're just bring the crowd right in, where they're like literally writing the set list for you on the spot. That makes everything really special. It's a little bit more difficult to do it with a full live electric show, especially, like me and John-Angus and Jack know all 80 Trews songs ever written or whatever, so we can go between them, but like Theo and Jeff, they know certain songs, not other ones, so it's a little bit harder to improvise. But typically what I'll do though, if someone asks for something in a show, I'll try to throw a little bit of it over another song or something.
This might be my favorite fan question. Shannon Smith asks, what's the weirdest thing that's ever been shouted at you from the crowd, and did you deserve it?
God, Colin. I think someone had a poster that said "Let's go splits on a baby," and I was like, that was a weird one. And I remember early on in our career, it wasn't about me, it was about Jack, because there was a group of guys that used to go see us in Mississauga before we were anything, and they just got into chanting "Great fucking bass." So for a bunch of True shows early on, when we started to take off, we'd have this group of guys going, "Great fucking bass," and I'm like, okay, enough. But they did it a lot, so I thought that was weird. But
that's funny. I lived in Mississauga for 11 years, so hopefully it wasn't me that was a part of the chant. The final fan question, Gary Rothwell asks, what is the hardest Trews song to play live?
Usually the hardest ones we just get rid of. Making Sunshine and Cry from Den of Thieves. They're two songs that people always ask for, and Making the Sunshine is almost, it's really hard to play and sing live.
Looking back on your life and career, what are you most proud of and what are you most grateful for?
I'm proud of sticking around as long as we have, making music that people still want to hear, maintaining a really loyal and dedicated fan base, and being able to keep the band together with the three core guys that started it, with me and John-Angus and Jack. So I'm really grateful for John-Angus and Jack, and then anybody that's ever bought a ticket to a Trews show that keep coming out. Like there's people that have seen like 300 shows, and I'm like, that's incredible, and I'll never not be grateful for that. And like, people always say to me, I'll go and meet fans. They're like, "Oh, you must be so sick of seeing me." I'm like, "Are you kidding? I love seeing you. I love that you want to spend time and money on coming to see me sing and seeing this band play. Like, it's the greatest compliment in the world." So you're never going to get me going, "Hey, you again." I'm like, "No, that's amazing. The fact that this means this much to you, because it means so much to me."
If you could sit down next to your 10-year-old self and you could whisper words of advice. So if you took everything you've learned since 10 years old, all the life lessons and mentorship and experiences, the highs and lows, the dreams accomplished, the failures, everything, and you could look at cute little Colin sitting there and you could whisper words of advice to guide him through this human experience, what do you tell him?
Um, you're good, and you're better than you think you are, but you got to work hard, and don't listen to everybody. Like, don't give yourself away to everybody. Like, not everybody knows what they're talking about. Be kind and respectful, but not everybody knows everything, and you know more than you think, and you're enough.